Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the TradeStation Masterclass. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities. And today we're going to do a little bit of EasyLanguage. For those that are new to EasyLanguage, EasyLanguage is TradeStation's proprietary programming language that allows you to customize and create custom studies, custom strategies, and do a lot of things on the platform that are pretty much personalizing your market analysis and strategy trading. Today, we're going to talk about counters, quantifying market events and trade signals with EasyLanguage. So we're going to take a look at what's built in. There are some studies in TradeStation that have counters set up already, and we're going to take a look at the insides of those studies and see how it's set up. And we are going to create a study of our own. So we're going to do a study from scratch, creating a counter and see how we can set that up. All right, let's go ahead and get that started. The usual disclosures, just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that we talk about is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. Okay, I'm going to keep the class as simple as I can, so that if you're not familiar with EasyLanguage, you can still follow along. By the way, if you need details on these disclosures, go to www.tradestation.com/important-information, and you'll see all the disclosures there, okay? Let me continue on this PowerPoint because I want to go through some of the concepts around setting up counters with EasyLanguage. We're going to take a look at syntax, how to set up the EasyLanguage code, and as I said, at the beginning of this presentation, we'll look at what's built in and create one of our own. Oh, I went backward. All right, so variables. Variables is the container that we're going to use inside of EasyLanguage. That's what it's called. It's called a variable, and it's going to hold a counter. Variables are the type of word in the EasyLanguage that can hold a number, bar by bar. So if you set it up as a counter, meaning that every time that you have this event, you can increment this variable by 1 or 2, whatever number you'd like to increment it by. It'll keep a record of that number bar by bar. It'll persist until the very front. And that's exactly what we're going to use today to count events inside of a chart analysis window. Now, the event can be anything you want. It can be a breakout. It can be a crossover. It can be a crossover zero. Anything you'd like to keep an eye on, you can count it and see how many times it happens in a particular period of time. Okay. If you set up a counter, most likely you're going to want that counter to reset at a given moment. These counters, of course, if you don't reset them, they're going to go on and on forever and keep on increasing. Maybe if that's what you're looking for, yes, you can do that. And it'll count from the very beginning of the chart, or as much historical data you have until the present time. But if you do want to have a counter that you can use at a set period of time, then you're going to need to reset that counter at particular times. For example, if you want to know how many bars ago did a crossover happen, you're going to have to reset it, because when it happens, then you're on bar 0 because it happened on the current bar. And then it just keeps on adding and adding. A little bit about the syntax. This is just an example. Variable. We know that in EasyLanguage, when you start typing your code, you can type in the word variable, or you can do an abbreviation var. You can do var or vars. It's the singular form or the plural. In this example that you see here on this PowerPoint slide, it is plural and abbreviated, vars. A colon, and then you have it's called a declaration statement. You have to declare the variables that you're going to be using inside your code. Now, this variable is named higher high count. It's a made-up name. And as a programmer, because if you're going to be doing a little bit of EasyLanguage, even if it's a little, you don't have to be a full-blown programmer. But even if you do a little bit of programming, you are creating these custom studies by yourself. So you're doing a little bit of programming. So the name of this variable is higher high count. And the number that you see inside parentheses is just initializing that variable into what we call a numeric variable. Numeric variables are the type of variable that are going to hold a number. Yes, there are other types of variables. For example, you can have a true false variable that we've used in other classes, and those hold either a true or false statement. That's why they're called true false variables. In this particular case, we're looking at a numeric, meaning that whatever calculation is performed for this name, higher high count, the result is going to be a number. And the initialization right there, it's to 0. It can be any number, but just to follow common practices in EasyLanguage, we initialize that to 0. And then the very end of the statement is finished with a semicolon. Once you have this word, you can use it to hold your counter. Let me show you how that's done. First, you have an if-then statement. And this is critical if you want the counter to be incremented or decremented at a particular events, when things happen on your chart. So there's always a condition tied in with the counter so that if the condition is true, if the event is happening, that's the time that you want to increment the counter. In this example, we're looking at the high and the high of one bar ago. If you have a high that is higher than the bar ago, then look at how the variable is used here on the third line of code. Higher high count equals higher high count plus 1. The way that is written is interesting because this way it'll use whatever current value higher high count has, and it'll add 1 to it. And every time that it goes through the cycle and it goes inside this if-then statement, it'll just continue to add 1. Else, if you don't get this, else is interesting because you can have an if-then else statement because you have a condition. If it's true, then you do this. Else, meaning that if it's false, what is it that we're going to do? We're going to set the counter to 0. So as long as you have higher highs, the counter is going to continue keeping track of that number and incrementing that counter. But as soon as the condition is not true, then it'll reset and it'll be set at 0. So that's if we follow the syntax, piece by piece, sometimes it'll just be easier to understand. Then if higher high count greater than 0, then we're going to plot the higher high count. That's just a regular plot statement. And the reason why we are looking for a value greater than 0 is to avoid having weird plots appearing on your chart. We want to make sure that we have a valid number, not 0, a valid number of counters so that it looks properly, it looks well on the chart. Now let's take a look at another way that you can count or set up a counter. This is counting bars to track signals. The paragraph here says trading rules often have multiple conditions or rules that need to line up on a bar in order to generate a trading signal. This grand lineup rarely happens. We could count the number of bars ago to signal a signal occurred to see if it occurred within a number of bars of another signal. Now this is an interesting paragraph, and I'm just going to paraphrase it so that it's clear. A lot of times you are using multiple technical indicators to confirm that something is truly happening. Confirmation across multiple indicators that are similar make the signal a little bit stronger. But a lot of times there is variation as to what bar that signal gets triggered. For example, if you're looking, let me just mute my electronics here. Otherwise, I'm going to keep on getting alarms. All right, perfect. Okay, so yeah, sometimes the alignment on that same bar is difficult. If you're looking for, let's say, a moving average crossover, and at the same time you're pairing that up with I don't know, another trending like momentum indicator, but the momentum crossover and the moving average crossover, they don't line up on the same bar. That's okay. You can count the bars to see how far ago the crossover happened. So for example, if you have a moving average crossover, but the momentum hasn't happened, or if it's happened within the last 5 bars, then I'm okay taking the trade because I'm going to take that signal that happened, 3 or 5 bars ago as a valid signal for today's bar. That's what this is meaning. So if you're using multiple conditions, to line up in one bar, This will help you, give you a little bit of wiggle room so that you can be flexible. And of course, you can set that up as an input. You can run optimizations, all that interesting stuff that you can do in EasyLanguage. It's something that you can use and leverage. Let's take a look at, here's some code. Example, cross bars ago plus equals 1. This is a different and interesting way of setting the counter. When I first looked at it, it's kind of confusing. Cross bars ago plus equals 1. If you write your counter this way, it'll also add 1 to cross bars ago. This is like the one we saw previously where the name of the variable is repeated in the formula. So the one we saw previously was cross bars ago equals cross bars ago plus 1. Now, of course, that can be reduced to just cross bars ago plus equals 1, and it'll do exactly the same thing. It just saves you having to type the name of the variable one more time. So you'll see it multiple times expressed like this, plus equals 1, but it's just the way that it just continuously increment 1 every time the condition is true. So if the MAC difference, this is the MACD signal that is put into this example, if the MAC difference crosses over 0, then cross bars ago equals 0. So when the event happens, we're going to set the counter to 0. And if MACDiff crosses under 0, then we're going to reset it to 0 as well. So this is an interesting setup because look at the counter. The counter that we see right there on the first line, it's not inside an if-then statement. So you're not counting only when the conditions are true. You're counting all the time. And anytime that you have a new bar, that counter will count 1. The way that is written, all it does is reset the counters every time the condition is met, resets them to 0, and it'll just continue counting 1 every single bar. That's the reason why on a bar in the future, you can say, okay, how many bars ago did my crossover happen? Because the cross bars ago will be a specific number. If it says 12, you know that it was 12 bars ago that a crossover happened because it hasn't been reset. That's an interesting way of looking at this counter, and you can do it either way. You can have the counter inside of an if-then statement, or have the counter always count, and the if-then statement just is used as a resetting of that counter. Well, let's take a look at some examples. This is the end of my 2 examples. Let me switch over here to my TradeStation platform. This is a chart Dow Jones. Okay, exactly. Yes, Jason, this is exactly right. By the way, you have access to the chat, so if you have any questions on what I'm showing, or if you need a little bit more clarification, just let me know, as Jason did. Jason, thank you so much for sending me that question. But yes, it's just an abbreviation, a short form of saying the exact same thing. Let's go ahead and change this to a security. I'm looking at an index. This is a Dow Jones index. It doesn't matter which security I load. I'm using Tesla, okay? And I'm gonna, yeah, this is fine. This is an intraday chart. Let's go ahead and take a look at, RSI now that Nick is mentioning here in his question. Let's take a look at the counters and see if we find a way to set it up, okay? Let me go ahead and go to studies, go to add study, all right? And this is taking a little bit longer. There we go, RSI. And I'm just gonna put it on my chart. And there it is, okay? So we can see that, let me make these lines a little bit thicker. Sometimes I like those lines to be thicker so that they're easier to see on the screen. Oh, my line is already thicker, so let's make it a tad thicker. Okay, perfect. So we can see that the RSI value, it's crossing on the current bar, and it's also crossed, a few bars ago. Let's go ahead and take a look. Usually, the charting studies do not have counters, but I'm going to open up another workspace here. I'm going to look at the ones that are built into TradeStation to see if I can see the counter applied. I'm going to go here to my applications, and I'm going to open up my radar screen. All right. Let's just wait until radar screen loads up here. There it is. Let's go ahead and add a list of symbols. I'm going to do the NASDAQ 100. All right. And in here, actually, let me go ahead and remove some of the columns here. Bid, ask, high, low. I don't need them. And I'm going to add the RSI. Now, I'm not sure if you have this version of the RSI all of you should have it because I believe this is a built-in study of TradeStation and it's part of the TradeStation platform. So you should have it. Let me scroll to the R's for RSI, and it should be this one that says RSI RS. If you don't have it, let me know right here in the chat. But this is an RSI that is designed for radar screen. Let me go ahead and add it. Let me move it down just at the very end. Let me go ahead and add the RSI as well, just to take a look at it. I'm going to take a look at the two versions of the RSI. I'm going to click OK. Okay. All right. So this is loading data as we go along. It doesn't provide you a counter as I was expecting. The RSI RS, which is designed for radar screen, just tells you if it's overbought or oversold based on the values that the RSI is generating. So let's, and it's generating some alerts, but not what I was expecting. This one right here is the general RSI, the one that has the overbought and the oversold level. But let's go ahead and do something. Let me right click on this one, RSI RS. I'm going to go to studies and I'm going to click on edit EasyLanguage for RSI RS. This is the way that you open up EasyLanguage in TradeStation, and this is what controls the study, and you can make modifications to it. I just want to look at the code and see if we can interject a little bit of code to make it do what we want it to do. Okay. Okay, I see your question, Nick. It's either or. You can make it do whatever you want. You know, if you want it to stop at MACD, you can. But if you want to add the RSI, of course, you can do that as well. So it all depends on how you set up the code. So Jessica just confirmed that she doesn't have the RSI RS. The RSI JP is the one that they have. You know, I've heard this many times. Maybe this is true. Maybe the RSI RS is not one that was built in to TradeStation, although I have it here with a copyright as if it was, you know, built by TradeStation, but it's okay. What I want to do is set up a counter. I want to set up a counter very similar to what we saw on the PowerPoint slide. And what I need is a counter that gets reset whenever there's a crossover. Everybody sees the crossover if-then statement here. If my RSI crosses over the oversold or my RSI crosses under the overbought, those are my two crossovers that I can use to very quickly, you know, reset my counter. If you guys don't have this one, it's okay. Let's go ahead and make modifications to the older one. So let me go ahead and close this one and open up just the regular RSI, because the procedure will be exactly the same. And if we're going to do it, you know, together, we might as well do it on the one that everyone has. Let me go here and look for a study. So I'm going to change this to indicator. Okay, click inside the box, press the R for RSI, and let me open this one, which is just a regular RSI, nothing else. Okay, this is going to open up the code, and I see it right there. It's got some inputs. It's got a lot of text. If it's the first time that you're looking at EasyLanguage, it may feel a little bit overwhelming, but don't stress. This is very normal. The more you look at EasyLanguage, the easier it'll get. For this example, let me go ahead and rename it so that I don't modify the original. So I'm going to go here to my file menu and click on Save As. And what I'm going to do to this RSI is just going to add the prefix at MC as it being an exercise that we created in masterclass. So at MC, and then I'm just going to click OK. So now you can see on the tab that is renamed. This is a good practice because you're not making modifications to the original code. So if something happens, if you break the code after so many modifications, you still have something to go back to. So always rename your code if you're going to make modifications. Okay. Here's the variable declaration statement. We talked about this earlier, and the only thing that is declared here is RSI value. I can add a comma here and set up the name of my counter so that EasyLanguage understands. And I'm going to say RSI cross ago so that I know that I want to track how many bars ago did the RSI cross. Does that make sense? And this will be a number. Remember that we initialize the variables to a number because the calculation will hold the number. Now, I do have the plot statements and I have the alert criteria, which are I'm going to use the alert criteria to reset my counter. And I'm going to add another plot here so that I can see the number that is being plotted. Now I'm gonna add my counter up here, RSI cross a go, and I'm going to use plus equal. Remember that this is the short form of the counter, and 1. So this little piece of code that I'm adding here in line 22, this is the number 22, RSI cross a go plus equal 1, is going to keep track of that counter, and every bar it'll increment it by 1. When the condition happens, I want the cross or the counter reset. So I'm going to add another action here. So I'm going to add the word begin, and my action here is going to be, we're going to set it to 0. RSI cross a go equals 0. And I do the other thing, I'm adding a begin because it's multiple actions. The first one is an alert, and the second one is the reset of the variable. All right, let's see if this works. I'm going to verify this. And of course, this word cannot start a statement because I added a semicolon here, and there's no semicolon before end. But let me go ahead and verify one more time. Okay, so let me do something here because I may just break these apart. For me, it's easier just to have an end and then break this other apart. If the RSI crosses under overbought, then begin, and then I have another end here. If alert enabled, let me take this off because this will only calculate this if the alert is enabled, and I want this to be calculated because it has my counter reset. So I don't want this to be dependent on the alert being enabled. I just want it to calculate every time that there is a crossover. Okay, let me verify this and see what happens. Okay, so verification is successful. Let me go ahead and just copy some of the things that I added here so that you have access to the lines that I added. That was one line that I added. I made modifications to the if-then statement. I added a begin, and then I added this other line, which resets the counter to 0. In fact, I can, send this code to anyone if you guys want to. So let's go ahead and give you the email address. I'm sure some of you already have it, but if you send an email to education@tradestation.com, I'm usually available to answer questions if you guys have any. Just give me, a day or two so that I can respond to your email. All right, so let's go ahead and once I have that in there, I need to add something. I need to add another plot here. Plot 4, because I want to plot my counter, which is RSI cross a go. And this is counter cross. This is just the label inside the parentheses, just so that I can know which one's which. Now if I want to modify it. For this, I can use it. I want to use it as a radar screen indicator. So I don't need these overbought and oversold levels. I don't need them, plotted. If you leave these plots on, what happens when you put it in radar screen, it'll have a column for overbought and oversold, and it'll repeat, the 70 and the 30 all the way down. In fact, and the way that you comment those lines out, by the way, I didn't explain this. If you add a double / at the very beginning of the line, you'll notice how it turns that line green, and green is just text that EasyLanguage will consider a text annotation, like a note, and it'll just skip it. So anything that is in green, it's pretty much skipped by EasyLanguage. So whenever you want to kind of disable a line but not remove it, just add a double / at the beginning, and it'll do the trick for you. Another thing that I can do is I can right click here, since this is specifically created for radar screen. I can right click on the code and go to properties. A lot of the studies, can be organized so that they only show in the application where they're going to be used. If I go here to applications, notice that it's showing in chart analysis and for radar screen. If you only want to show it in the list, if you're looking at radar screen, you can uncheck chart analysis. And the other way too, some indicators or studies that you're going to be creating or modifying are going to be specifically created for a particular application. And you probably don't want it to show up on the list if you go to add a study because it doesn't apply to that application. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to click OK to this. And if you make any changes to the properties, you have to verify again so that those changes get applied. And I think we're good. Let me go ahead and check. Yeah, let me go ahead and plot it on my radar screen and see what it looks like. Let me go here Let me remove the RSI RS study because this is all based on the original RSI. I'm going to add the one that I created just to see what it looks like in comparison. All right, let's go here to, this is the indicator. I'm going to go to add MC. Add MC RSI. Here it is. I'm just going to add it and click OK. All right, so here we go. We can see the RSI value that remains unchanged because we didn't make any modifications, but we have this new column called cross counter. And this is counting how many bars ago the cross happened. Now, I don't need the double zeros at the very end. That's a formatting or a configuration setting that I can disable if I want to. If I go here to the edit of the studies and I go here to the style, cross counter is a number that I can drop the decimals to. Then click OK. And I can set this as a default, right? Can I? Maybe, but see, this is cleaner because now there are integers and I don't have the decimals and it's a little cleaner. The counter here is a straight counter. So if we were to, let me remove this RSI, which I don't need anymore. And I'm going to reduce the size of the radar screen so that I can have a chart here on the right-hand side. Okay, let's do this. And let's put the RSI in here. I'm going to go to studies, add studies. On the chart, I'm just going to do the regular RSI. All right, there we go. And for Apple, for example, let me link these two windows together before I do that. Linking allows you to click on Apple here on the left, and it tells you that it crossed 11 bars ago. If right here on the chart, we were to count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right here. That's where the condition was true. And you can see that there was the crossover from an oversold level. It went inside the channel, that triggers the alert and resets my counter. It hasn't crossed in 11 bars. Of course, 11 bars for Apple on a 5-minute chart just means 55 minutes ago, right? If we were to change this time frame to daily, you can see that it's been longer since the RSI crossed for Apple. So here on my radar screen, I also have to change the interval. So I click on the column header, time frame, daily, and the calculations are set to interval. And you can see that for Apple, last time it crossed was 23 bars ago. But these counters, of course, allow you to rank symbols. And you can see which ones are the ones that are crossing right now. If I double click on cross counter, all the ones that are showing a 1 means 1 bar ago. So PDD, if I click it, notice that it happened 1 day ago. Out of the 100 symbols that make up the NASDAQ, there are no symbols that are crossing right now. It would say 0. The closest one is this PDD that happened 1 bar ago. And you can see the ones that are 2 bars ago, 3 bars ago, and so forth. And if you double click again, it'll do the ranking in descending order. Like, for example, this security, QCOM, hasn't crossed in 170 days. The last time it crossed was right here back in June of 2024. So some interesting things you can find out by setting these counters and see how long ago something has happened. Jason is asking here in the chat, can we do the same thing and plot in the chart analysis on a histogram, for example, to visualize how long the symbol may remain crossed? Yes, for sure. Let me go back here into my EasyLanguage. Let me remove the property that I unchecked, because if I leave it here, I won't see it in the chart analysis. Let me go ahead and click OK and verify it one more time. And I should see some sort of a histogram when I add that indicator to the chart. Let me go here to time frame. I'm sorry, not the time, studies, add studies. And I'm going to go here to RSI. Actually, it's at MC RSI. Correct. Nick, thank you for that. Add MC RSI. Where is it? Here it is. All right. So you can see that my counter right now it's set to 170. I don't think it's incrementing every single tick. Maybe, not sure, but it doesn't seem that I need to disable the update tick by tick. Yeah, I can do that, Jessica. In fact, if you send me an email at education@TradeStation, it's better for me to send you the EasyLanguage document, and that way you can import it into your TradeStation if that's what you want to do. But in this particular example, we can see that QCOM matches my counter here, 170, but you can see it's not a histogram, it's a line, but you can make it a histogram. you can just double click on that line. And then instead of, that would be here, instead of a line, you can make it a histogram, make it as thick as you need it to be. And then you can see the histogram playing on the screen like that. So it's an interesting way of looking at counters as well. All right. There is an example that I wanted to show you as well. Maybe we have time, maybe we don't, but let's go ahead and write it together. Let me add a study and go here to volume average, regular volume average study. And let's go and take a look at volume average. And let's set this to an intraday chart. I'm going to set it to a 5-minute chart. All right. And this is fine. Volume average is an interesting study because it allows you to see where it crosses over the average. Let me just remove the RSI here. Yes. Okay. So I was saying that this volume indicator, volume average, the first thing that it does, it color codes volume. So you know if it's up volume or down volume. Up volume defined as volume that occurs when the closing price of the candle is higher than the previous close. And of course, down volume, or the red bar, just means that the closing price of the candle is lower than the previous bar. But in addition to that, it also plots a yellow line, which is a 50-period moving average of volume. And every so often, we're going to see volume, or the real volume, the intraday volume, exceed the average by a certain amount. Now, the volume average indicator, let me go ahead and double click here on one of its bars, has in the inputs the alert criteria, alert percentage 50. So in order for the alert to be triggered, volume has to exceed the average by 50%. So if your volume is 100,000, or the volume average, if the volume average is 100,000, your volume for that bar should be 150,000 in order for the alert to be triggered. Of course, in one bar, it may not be very significant. For example, if you look at the